Welcome to Born on the Bayou Sports, a Houston sports show made for Houstonians by Houstonians. Join Tim Costello and Scott Barzilla every week as they break down the latest in Houston Astros, Rockets, and Texans news. Tim's a former minor league broadcaster, and Scott has written 2 books on the Baseball Hall of Fame. Yeah, if Javier could get it figured out, it would make things a lot easier because he was that guy everybody was counting on this year to be a Cy Young candidate, take that big step forward and help anchor this rotation with Fromber.
Since he's come to Houston, you can look at the development of guys like Carlos Correa defensively, Jeremy Pena defensively. I mean, you can Alex Bregman's, certainly I think a better than average third baseman.
And now you're putting teams in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9. Now here comes Will Anderson. Pin back your ears, let's go. So if you're Bayou born and bred, or just like spending time in the H, sit down, relax, and stay Houston strong. Welcome all my friends back into Born on the Bayou Sports. Holiday spirit is flowing here in the Lone Star State. Scott, how are we doing this evening?
We are doing fantastic. I noticed your hat there. So are you a put them all out kind of guy, or are you giving gimmies? Where are you stand on that one?
I love to give a gimme. The look on someone's face when you give them like they hit one that's like it's 2.5, 3 feet. They know it's getting a little longer than they wanted it to be. And when you look at them and say, that's good. The look of just appreciation on someone's face is fantastic.
I've played the strict inside the leather rules, and when you get it like onto the putter grip, you just reduce me to tears at that point because I've got the yip something awful.
Yeah, you'd enjoy playing with me, Scott. I'm pretty generous with giving out the gimmies to the people that I play with. But the Just Tap It In hat is really more of a Happy Gilmore reference. I don't know if you're picking up
true.
on that.
Yeah,
just tap it in, tap tap tap.
Yeah, there
But
you go.
I have a question for you, Scott. This week, obviously, holidays full effect. Everybody's getting out of school. Most people are starting to take their vacation time. So my company did the old virtual gathering for Christmas, right? My team meets up, and the theme was classic ugly sweater, ugly holiday sweater. I personally have never bought one. I don't understand the desire to own an ugly sweater. Are you an ugly sweater owner yourself, Scott?
No, and we do dress up too, and half of them I can't do. Like on Monday, it was dress up like Ralphie from Christmas Story, where you had like the full bunny suit.
Y'all's
It's like
dress up days are way more intense than my wife's.
that's like I am not going to go out and buy this shit just so I can wear it one day a year.
My wife does go to school in a blue wig about 4 to 5 times a year for pep rallies.
Yeah, I could see that. So my question for you is, I have a person that does not quite rise to the level of scumbag or horse's ass. And so I want to see where they rank in your pantheon of annoying people.
Is this the guy on Facebook I keep interacting with?
No. This is a type of person. This is not a specific person. I hate lottery person. You're going into the convenience store. You want to buy something quick, and they're standing in front of you. They're scratching off their scratch tickets. Then they're going to cash them in. They're going to buy more scratch offs. And it's like, dipshit.
Yeah.
Move over to the other slot where there's nobody there. Scratch them off, and then get back to the end of the line. Don't make me waste my time waiting for you to scratch off your scratch offs.
I think the person you're describing is pretty rare, Scott. Like I feel like most times when I see people buy scratch offs, they will move out of the way. So that's an exceptional scumbag that you encountered there out in the wild that made you wait while he scratched off. I always see the classic. Give me 2 number 6s, give me a number 10, give me a number 3, and throw in 2 number 2s.
She did apologize afterwards, but it's like have some situational awareness and kind of look around you before you're going to take up that spot.
Classic. Classic. Well, speaking of taking up a spot, the Astros have to figure out who are going to take up the spot of right field as King Tuck is now a Chicago Cub. Scott, the package a little bit different than the one we discussed last week on the show. Sayaka Suzuki did not want to come to Houston, which is shocking to me. However, you get a fantastic prospect. You get a Houston native who's got some pretty high upside as far as velocity is concerned. And you get somebody you were trying to get at the All-Star break last year that could play first or third base in Paredes.
Yeah, my initial reaction is I like the package. I think for 1 year of Tuck, I think it's fair. You get 3 years of Paredes. You get, obviously Smith's all of his, his time. I think the immediate key of this deal would be Wesniewski. Is that how you pronounce that name?
Which one? I'm sorry.
The pitcher Wesniewski. Is that the?
Yes.
So he's got 4 offerings. So I'm kind of wondering if they could do like a Kikuchi kind of deal where they sit there and pick out the secondary offering that's the worst and just kind of say, you're just not going to throw that pitch. And maybe something turns around. He has, I think, a 3.94 ERA and 190 career innings, about somewhere around 20 career starts in that neighborhood. Pitched in, both starting and in relief. So he's a guy that if he doesn't make your rotation, could pitch in long relief.
And has experience at the back end of a bullpen. This is someone that the Cubs moved from a late inning guy into a 4th or 5th starter role.
Yeah, so there's a lot of flexibility there. I think the long-term key of the deal would be Smith. What does Smith give you ultimately? He immediately steps in as the Astros' number 1 prospect, which probably tells you more about the Astros system than it does about him as a prospect. But I think it was pretty much, what you could expect. No, I mean, there's no way of knowing what the Yankees were ultimately offering. I mean, there was rumors about Gill, but I think I saw some of the rumors that the Yankees themselves balked on giving up Gill. So, I mean, who knows what their final package was.
And also, Jim Crane said he was not going to send Kyle Tucker to the Yankees. Like, he flat out came out and said, like, I'm not going to send him to a team that we plan on seeing in the playoffs at some point. Why would I want to have this guy hurt me down the line? At least if you send him to the Cubs and you see him in the playoffs, it means you're both playing for the World Series title.
Yeah, and it's one of those unfortunate things. I think in the immediate term, you're not as good in 2025 as you were, coming into this trade. You're probably better in 2026 and beyond. But obviously, there's some more moves that need to be made, and we'll talk about those. But just if you look at this deal in a vacuum, I think it's a pretty good deal for the Astros.
So you mentioned you think we're good by 2020, better by 2026. Do you think Smith makes it to the show in the year?
Possibly there's an outside chance, but I think even then you're getting a guy in Paredes who's going to be there beyond, and I'm just assuming Tucker would have walked.
Yeah.
So you're assuming that Tucker walks, you get nothing but a comp pick. So instead in 2026, you get Paredes and Wesniewski on your roster.
That's fair. And I can understand that thought process. And I think the moment Soto signed the deal that he did too, that was the nail in the coffin. Because if you actually look at the numbers that these guys produce, right? Like the last 3 years, Kyle Tucker has been nearly identical to Juan Soto, right? Like they both got drafted fairly young. Kyle Tucker's still a pretty young guy entering his prime. I can't imagine what that contract would look like, right? Like Kyle Tucker's a $300, $400 million guy, right?
Yeah, and I think Soto's numbers are inflated a lot based on the postseason performance, which is something that Tucker does not have. But even still, if you're, and then this is the point that I've been making the whole time, and this is where I think in Brown we trust, right? This is what we have to be. The Astros are not paying him $400 million. Is he worth $400 million?
If that's what the market says for today, right? Like, I don't think any player's worth that. However, if that's the state of the market and you are a free market economist, then you kind of have to say like, yeah, he is worth that.
Exactly. And so I think you have to trust him. And I think that if you're a smart GM, and I say this about the next domino to fall, Brown's already gone to Frommer's agent. He's already gone to him and asked him, hey, theoretically, what do you think it would take to keep your client? And if the Astros were willing to pay it, they already would have paid it. They haven't, which tells you that they're not willing to pay what he's asking. And that's the other nail in the coffin. When Max Fried signed, because think about this. 3 guys. I'll give you 3 guys. Who would you rather have? Would you rather have Fried, Blake Snell, or Frommer?
For how long?
I'm just saying, just in a theoretical year.
Probably Fried.
Well, see, I could make an argument for Frommer because Fried averages about 2 or 3 starts fewer a season.
Yeah,
Frommer,
but Fromber has a couple starts a year that you wish he didn't make.
Well, everybody does. I'm sure Fried has that as well.
I love Fromber. I have an irrational love for Fromber Valdez. Like, I watched this guy figure it out in a playoff game where Carlos Correa walked to the mound, pounded him on the chest, and said, "You're our fucking guy. Let's go." And all of a sudden, Fromber from that moment on became a different person, right? So, like, as a fan, just take it as a fan. I have an irrational love for this guy because he stepped up in that moment and has been stepping up for the most part ever since.
I'd have to look at Fried's postseason numbers because I really didn't look at them carefully, but I compared both he and Frommer in an article for Crawfish Boxes, and it's like you said, in terms of the quality of starts, Fried's a tad better since 2020, but not noticeably better. And if you want to eliminate that 2020 season, Fried went 7-0 with like a 2.2 ERA, and Frommer was just getting started being Frommer. So if you want to go 2021 to the present, they're practically identical in terms of like ERA and stuff like that. And Frommer pitches more games and deeper into games. Because that's another thing you got to consider is that he pitches since 2020 a half inning more per start. That matters.
Yeah.
And so you could make a definite argument that Frommer is the guy you'd prefer, and Fried just signed for 8 years, $218 million, and Snell signed 5 years, like what, 140?
I'd give Fromber 120.
But see, both of those are $28 million a year salaries, average annual value. Are you going to tell me Frommer's not worth $28 million a
No,
season?
I'm not, because he is.
So if you're Frommer, what I would ask for, and then if you wait a year, salaries are going to go up. If I'm Frommer, yes, I'm a year older because he's the exact same age as Fried, pretty much. They're both entering into their age 31 season. I'd ask for 7,200 if I were Frommer.
Yes, for what?
I would ask for 7 years, $200 million. If you were going to wait beyond this season, 1 fewer year than Fried, so that they both end at the same age, and that's just a little bit more than Fried got per year.
Yeah, I'd bet the Astros offer is somewhere around 3 to 4 years at maybe 25 to 30 AAV. Right? I'll give you if I'm Brown, I'll give you 3 at 90.
They may go up to like say 125.
I don't want him for. I don't know if he's already 31 though. I think he's a ground ball pitcher. I don't know.
Well, what I'm saying though is that and this is the same thing they do with Bregman. So you look at Bregman, 6 for 156 is the offer. That's not horrible, but you know full well it's not enough to get him. And that's where I think the Astros are with these things. That's the same thing they did with Correa.
They're vanity offers.
It's the same thing they did with Springer. It's the same thing they did with Cole. They made offers. Yeah, they made offers to all of them, but they knew that they weren't going to accept them.
The
And
Astros
so,
are the king of the vanity offer. You can go to the fans and you can say, "We offered them. We tried. We made an offer, but you were
yeah,
never in the ballpark." Like Correa's
yeah,
deal, they made it sound like it was getting put close between the Astros and some other mystery team with Correa that first offseason. And then it comes out afterwards like the Astros never made a second offer. They made one
yeah.
offer, and that was it.
And I think the same thing. And I know that I sent you the rumor today that the Astros apparently may have had a deal in principle for Nolan Arenado, but Arenado and his camp rejected the trade. Now, there are some rumors behind the scenes that he hasn't categorically rejected it 100%. He just has a list of 6 preferred teams that he wants to go to. So, my question to you is, are there any circumstances where you would like that move?
No, there's none, because I think he's still really expensive. He's on the downside of his career. His offensive numbers have been declining. And if you look at the teams that are on his no trade clause, one of them is the Los Angeles Angels. That doesn't scream that I want to win when you want to go to the fucking Angels.
I think he's a California boy, is I think what it is.
Doesn't matter. If you're willing to go play there, you don't care about winning.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. If you sign as a free agent to go to the Angels, if you're Kikuchi, you telling me, and it's okay. It's okay. It's the job. But you're telling me that the money was the most important factor over winning and culture, right? Like that's if you go play for the Angels, that is the statement that you're making is that you're okay taking a fat paycheck even though you know you're probably not going to win. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. I was going to say the only thing that would make it palatable to me is number one, it would have to be a shit prospect going the other way. I mean, it would have to be like just a flat giveaway. And number two, the Cardinals would have to pick up at least another 10 million of his salary. So basically, the way his salary is structured, he's getting 32 million in 25, 27 million in 26, and 15 million in 27. The Rockies are picking up 5 million for both 25 and 26. So that drops them to 27 and 22 million that the Cardinals have been responsible for. Now,
And here's what worries me, Scott. The glove with Arenado is fine, right? Damn good defensive third baseman. 2020 at a 738 OPS. Like, okay, 2020 is a weird year. A lot of people had down years. Altuve sucked. 807 in 2021, 891 in 2022, then back down to 774 in 2023, and 719 OPS this year. The home run totals were down, only 16 homers this year, the least he's hit since 2014. I mean, and he played 157 games. It wasn't like he didn't play.
It gets worse, Tim. It gets worse because his StatCast numbers are like OPS would be a 660 for this last year. Hard hit percentage, 2020 was the only year that he went below 37%. Last year, 31% hard hit balls. He's not hitting the ball hard. Now, could he bounce back to like, say, 35%? Maybe. I mean, I guess anything's possible. I guess, my thought process is that let's say the Cardinals chipped in $20 million, for $10 million for each of the next 2 seasons and take a shit prospect. Take my wife, please. I mean, if I'm a Cardinals executive, I'm not taking that deal. I'm going to pay you $20 million and you're going to basically give me nothing in return.
Right.
I wouldn't take that. So,
but Scott, real quick, if you're the Astros, why are you willing to pay that amount of money per year for a third baseman not named Alex Bregman? Right? Like, why are you willing to pony up for that deal when that's more money for 2 years than Bregman would get over the next 2 years, right? Like, you're still going to go over that cap number that you're worried about. So what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, I think, well, there's a reason for that, which I'm going to get to later on in this show. But without, to bury the lead there for a little bit later, I think the thinking process is, okay, they just offered Bregman 6 years. So that's the bar, right? Arenado's only signed for 3 more years. And so I guess the thought process is that you get half the length because they're probably worried about what Bregman's going to be at the end of his 6 years. But basically, if you want to look at it this way, it's like somebody said, I can't remember who it was. We are acquiring Bregman's last 3 seasons of his 6-year deal when we get Arenado. That's what you're doing. If you look at age, if you look at every other factor, it's like somebody said about the Bayou contract. We're getting the last 3 years of like a 6-year deal. I mean, I don't want to pay into that.
It's the exact opposite of what we should be doing, right? Like, when you're trying to build out a team. And also, let's look at the fact that you just traded for a top third base prospect who has raked everywhere he went, right? So, like, from that aspect of it, if you want to tell me I don't want Bregman for 6 years because we've got this guy now, it's a tough sell simply because, like, he is still a prospect, right? Prospects are just that, prospects. And at some point, Altuve is going to retire. You can move Bregman to second. You can move these things around as time goes on. But I don't know, Scott. Like, if you're willing to spend on Arenado for 3 years at that level, you should be willing to give that level of money to Bregman for 3 years, right? Like, and then after that, like, this is a franchise cornerstone. Like, you don't treat franchise cornerstones the way that the Astros are treating theirs right now. Like, there is a statue of Craig Biggio throwing the ball to other franchise cornerstone Jeff Bagwell in front of fucking Minute Maid Park. Those guys never played for another team. They played for the Astros, nobody else. And now, unfortunately, one of them is intricately involved with the front office. However, like, these guys are forever associated with the team. And that is even an era that has the level of success that this one has. But we're just going to show them the fucking door. Like, the Rockets made the same mistake with Hakeem Olajuwon. You let Hakeem Olajuwon go play in Toronto. And it doesn't matter if he wasn't good that year. It's still fucking Hakeem Olajuwon, and you don't ever want to see him in anything but a Rockets uniform.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you ever watch The Simpsons?
Yeah, but I mean, it's been years since I've been a Simpsons watcher.
You ever watch the Simpsons episode where they did the barbershop quartet?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I can think of the Family Guy one, though. You've got AIDS, not HIV, but full-blown AIDS.
Yeah, well, the whole thing with the barbershop quartet episode of The Simpsons is that they wanted to come up with a name that would initially be hilarious, but would lose its luster with each saying. So they call themselves the B Sharps, and so they say the name once, and everybody's like, and then they kept saying it, and it's like, Nolan Arenado is that guy. You say his name, and you're like, the first time you say it's like, future Hall of Fame third baseman. All right. And then each time you think about it, it's like, yeah. I was thinking about this with Bregman, about putting a statue up. Unfortunately, in order to be situated correctly, his statue would have to be in the middle of Crawford. That wouldn't quite work out. It'd be a bit of a traffic snarl to kind of draw around the Bregman statue, but
that'd be hilarious.
But yeah, my thing is that I'm okay with, because you also got Bryce Matthews that could theoretically play third. So you've got 2 guys in the system that could hit as a third baseman. Smith also can play first, so you could do some shuffling around. Paredes can move to maybe a hybrid DH role, if you really wanted to do things that way. But to me, you got to treat this, okay, you got a bucket of $250 million. You need to spend it as wisely as you possibly can. And if you're not going to keep a high-priced guy or two like Bregman or Valdez, you need to spread that money around, get more solid baseball players, and not just an aging one that, like Jake Taylor, man, I wish we had had him 2 years ago.
We did.
4 years ago then.
And the only way I'd be okay with this deal, the only way, if it got restructured like a Stephon Diggs kind of thing with this contract, where like it's a 1-year deal. If it was a 1-year deal, I'd be like, okay, let's give it a shot. We've got some prospects coming up. We've got Paredes, like we could okay, let's give it a shot as a 1-year option to fill this void that's being created. I don't want this guy for 3 years. The idea of bringing in someone like it's a terrible idea, and it's how bad baseball teams run things, right? Like when you're trying to go for ticket sales and you bring in a name like that, thinking that like it'll excite. It's a Drayton move, right? Like that's what that is, right? That's bringing in a guy like that and trying to sell me on it, and be like, hey, we got a future Hall of Famer. Like that's how the Astros used to do things. That's not how Jim Crane does things.
Well, yeah, and if you look at the contract just flat out, so if the Cardinals kick in no cash, that's 3 years, $64 million. If I today sat there and said, hey, here's Christian Walker for 3 years, $64 million.
Done. Let's go.
Which one would you want?
Christian Walker, and Paredes is playing third.
Exactly.
And I feel like we're in a pretty good situation. Are we better than last year? No. Are we more diverse than last year? Yes, right? Because now you're adding Walker can maybe cancel out Bregman a little bit, and Paredes is certainly better than Singleton, right? Like, or Walker's better than Singleton, and Paredes isn't quite as good as Bregman, but who knows what the Crawford box is in left field next year? I don't know. But at least that team has more balance in the lineup versus, blowing it all on a third baseman and continuing to see John Singleton take at bats as my first baseman.
And that naturally assumes that you do absolutely nothing in the outfield, except go with like we're going to go Dubon, Myers, McCormick, which might be the worst starting outfield in recent Astros history. But let's assume that
it's Sunday fun day every day at Houston.
Yeah. It's YMCA day. I get to play.
Every day is YMCA day. They should just take the field to the song for the Y if that's the outfield lineup.
But if you went out and you threw like a few million at a Gamble, or you threw a few million at a Hayward, or you threw a few million at a Tommy Pham,
I hate all those options, but I get it.
I wouldn't love it, but at least you would have like multiple options, and not like we're just going to pray to God Chas McCormick is 2023 Chas McCormick.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'd love to see Chas return. Like that would be ideal.
I don't know that we can anticipate, or Jake Myers is going to take the next step and become a better offensive player.
I mean, you still got, but like that's frustrating, right? Is like if we're gonna stick with the guys we have in the outfield, at least for the center field option, give me Dubon every day. Like at least like Dubon plays a good enough center field, and his bat is better. Yerkson Profar is still out there. He is a guy who can play a lot of different positions. Jock Peterson. Yeah, we've talked about that name before. He had a 908 OPS last year with 23 bombs. He can play left field. He's fine.
Santander would be a little pricier.
Santander would be pricier, a little bit younger too.
But the thing is that so if you were to make a deal, like you bring in a Christian Walker, and you were to sign one of those names that we just mentioned, let's not say not Santander, because I think Santander and Walker would be a little
you're not getting both of those guys.
Yeah, a little bit too rich. But let's say you were to get Jock Peterson along with Walker. How are you feeling about this baseball team at that point?
Pretty damn good, Scott. Pretty damn fucking good about that team. Although Peterson didn't play a single defensive out last year.
No, but in the past, he's been as a corner outfielder. He came up as a center fielder.
He's not a center fielder anymore.
No, I don't know that he ever really was.
He
He was
fine
in
his first couple years.
he was in center field. And of course, Vince Scully, was talking about how he was the best defensive center fielder he'd ever seen, which we'll get to.
It's laughable.
We'll get to that kind of commentary later on in the show as well. But as a corner, as a left fielder, right fielder, he'd be passable, particularly in left field with that.
Left field will be fine.
Yeah, with that wall, he'd be fine. And you've had Peterson in left, Myers, Dubon in center, McCormick in right. It's not an outfield that is going to make anybody forget about any of the famous outfields in baseball history, like the Blue Jays outfield of my youth, but it's something.
And you got a really strong infield.
Absolutely.
And you've got
Well, the best part of Walker is that Walker could legitimately be the Gold Glove first baseman in the American League. And so you think about all those plays where Pena maybe threw a little ball in the dirt or Altuve threw a little ball in the dirt. Now you got a guy that picks it.
Yeah. And we had one of those for a long time. The Astros had a Gold Glove first baseman during both their title runs in Yuli, right? And he helped Altuve win a Gold Glove. He helped Correa win a Platinum Glove, right? This is, he helped Pena win a Gold Glove. So
Pena, was Pena in Yuli's
22.
last year?
22 was Yuli's last year. So, I mean, Pena was a better shortstop when he had that kind of first baseman over there. When you replace it with Jose Abreu and John Singleton and Yainer Diaz and Victor Caratini and Mauricio Dubon and Zach DeZenzo, and am I forgetting anybody here, Scott?
Oh, I'm sure, throw in the kitchen sink here.
But either way, when those are the guys playing first, right, you don't get that same leeway. You've got to be perfect on your end, and that is just that little bit extra thing you have to think about. When you've got a guy like Yuli or a Christian Walker over there, fucking let it fly, and you know that your guy's going to make a play. Carlos Correa doesn't worry about perfect ball placement. Carlos Correa just, fucking let it rip, and knew Yuli would get him.
Well, and I was going to say, remember we spent episodes, plural, asking why Joey Loperfido was not getting run at first base. That's how bad
another
it
one.
was.
He got a couple games.
That's how bad it was last year.
All right, let's move on, because at the end of the day, we're just hypothetically it here with the Texans. I mean, with the Astros. But one thing we can be literal about is the Houston Texans are gaining a little bit of a reputation in the NFL for some hard hits. They put another player on a stretcher against the Miami Dolphins in a victory. But I'm going to say, Scott, that one was on Tua.
Yeah. You know what? My favorite stat when D'Amico was still in San Francisco was, do you know how many games in his last season as defensive coordinator, how many games 49ers opponents won the week after they played the 49ers?
Oof. 4. 0. Taking back-to-back losses.
No, I mean, no. Even the ones where they beat the 49ers, because 49ers were never undefeated. I'm just saying that the 49ers played such a physical style of football. Those teams, I mean, there's a hangover effect.
Yeah.
And I think, Bullock's hit, he may end up getting fined. I don't know if he has or fined already.
But that ball placement put the receiver in a position that, what could Bullock do? He's trying to make a pick, right? He was diving for the ball.
Yeah, I don't think it was a dirty play. It was just kind of an unfortunate thing. But they're hitting these guys. And here is another game, Tim, where the opposing quarterback had his worst game of the year. Tua has never played that badly in any game this year. Josh Allen, his worst game of the year by far against the Texans. Trevor Lawrence, worst 2 games of the year against the Texans.
Anthony Richardson was terrible against the Texans.
Anthony Richardson's terrible against the Texans. Jordan Love, probably you could argue that was his worst.
Not good.
Game.
Yeah.
You could argue, and then Jared Goff, obviously, probably his worst game as a pro.
Yep, we lost.
And +3 in turnover margin, and we lost. I don't, and we did that twice this year. I don't know how you pull that off. We've done it 3 times, and we have a 1-2 record in those games.
Insane.
Yeah, but that I don't think we can say enough nice things about this defense.
Oh, it's amazing.
And the thing is that, and I think with a lot of people look at defense and they look at the 2000 Ravens, they look at the 85 Bears, and they look at all these defenses and they go, well, you're not that good. And it's like, yeah, those were probably 2 of the best defenses in NFL history. You're not going to be as good as those defenses. But I don't know if there's a better defense in the NFL right now.
I don't think so. And look, and we've been talking hypotheticals all day. Let's say this defense goes on a run and wins a Super Bowl. Then I think you have to put it in line with those other 2 defenses because those other 2 defenses won their team's Super Bowls. So if this defense just fucking goes lights out in the playoffs and carries this team to a Super Bowl victory, then at that point you can't say that anymore, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But they have and there's some troubling numbers that I think keeps them from that level. I think they are bottom 5 in the number of 30-yard plus plays surrendered. So I mean, this team surrenders a lot of big chunk plays at the wrong times in games. They didn't do it against Miami. I mean, that was a grind it out. Miami had to gain those in little chunks. Tyreek Hill, who I think is a Hall of Famer, I think you'd probably agree. 2 catches for 26 yards.
That's from our hat tip, though.
Yeah, I'll get to him.
I want to talk about him a little bit more right here, not in the way that you're going to talk about him later. CJ Stroud, in the post-game press conference, mentioned that he wouldn't mind throwing to Stingley, with his ball tracking ability and his hands and athleticism. You've got a guy coming out of college who just won the Heisman for playing both positions. His coach in college football was well known for coming in and doing some things on offense as well as being a shutdown corner. Do you see a world where Stingley gets some offensive snaps?
I was going to even make another comparison. You remember when Belichick used Troy Brown as a corner?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think, obviously, you don't want a guy playing 120 snaps.
No.
That's ridiculous. However, I do think maybe 5 or 10 offensive snaps.
I was going to say 15, but yeah, if you pick some big moments where you want to take a shot or something like that, well, he would be a guy I'd trust on a deep ball. He's either going to make the catch or he's going to swat it away.
Well, or even if he's merely a decoy where somebody goes, oh, shit, this Stingley guy, it's still going to help your offense.
I mean, at this point, I have to think Stingley would be a better option out there than Hutchinson, right? Like, if I want to take a shot down the field and I have a choice to put Hutchinson out there for that shot or Stingley.
Oh, yeah. Hutchinson's not a burner. I mean, I think the only problem with that at this stage is this would be something you would have to do in training camp where you would sit there and say, okay, we're going to teach you like 3 routes, 4 routes. So you're Stingley, you're not learning the entire route tree because that's unrealistic. So if you want them to sit there and say, okay, you're going to run a fly, you're going to run a post, you're going to run a slant, that's all you're going to have to learn. Because
maybe a sluggo. Give me a slant and go. Give me a little trickeration. But yeah, those 4. Give me 4 routes.
But yeah, just choose, but handpick them whatever you think he's going to be best at and say you're learning these, like, say 3 routes. And then, we'll run you 10 snaps a game in particular games. It doesn't have to be every week. Like when you're playing the Jaguars, you probably don't need Stingley, giving you a little bit of extra boost. But when you're playing the Chiefs or the Ravens, every little bit's going to help.
Absolutely, Scott. I couldn't agree more. I think at the end of the day, you get, 53 guys, 47 dress at the end of the day, I think is what it is. You've got 47 weapons out there. You use them however you want to use them to win a football game. Most people use them. These guys start on defense. These 11 start on offense. This is my kicker. This is my punter. These are special teamers. Everybody else is backups. But at the end of the day, if you've got a guy that gives you versatility, and we just finished talking about the Astros. One of the things we love about the runs that they had is a lot of the guys that were on the roster gave them positional versatility. You have a Dubon, you have a Marwin, you have an Aldamus Diaz who can play multiple positions. You have a Chaz who can play every spot in the outfield. You've got a Paredes who can play first or third. You just traded for a prospect who can play first or third. Like you've got a catcher who can play first or catcher. Like you want positional flexibility. So the idea that you could maybe carry a one less wide receiver if you've got Stingley as your emergency wide receiver, and maybe have an extra pass rusher, have a specialty linebacker, right? Like I feel like it just opens up what you can do with those 47 game day roster spots a lot more.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one.
All right, Scott, let's look up ahead to a game that we all probably have had circled on our schedule since they came out. Texans against Kansas City. And at the end of the day in this league, if you want to measure yourself against the rest of the league or against the best of the best, you got to beat the Chiefs. Nothing matters if you can't get past the Chiefs. Ask the Bills. They haven't done it. And so far, the Texans have showed up against the best teams in the league. The defense has, at least. You've given Josh Allen fits. You've given the Lions fits. You gave the quarterback there fits. I mean,
Jared Goff,
yeah. You gave Love a good team in Green Bay fits on offense, but again, none of that matters. Is you can't beat Kansas City.
Well, and what I was going to say though is that Kansas City is a better version of Houston. If you look at it, great defense, offense that many people think is explosive and thinks should be better than what it is, and a team that wins a shit ton of close games. I mean, and a lot of it's luck. And you see how they won the doink. You get the doink through the, it just how many, I think they had one where they blocked a field goal at the end. Or it's just they find a different way to win every week, which is if you look at the Texans' victories, with the exception of the Patriots game.
And the Cowboys. They beat the shit out of
the Cowboys game. Yeah, that's true. So of their 9 wins, 7 of them have been by one score. So they're similar teams. So I think it's a good measuring stick. I think I am more worried about the Chiefs' defense than I am about their offense. Because their best player on defense is Chris Jones. What position does he play, Tim?
He's a tackle.
What's our worst part of our offensive line, Tim?
That'd be the interior, Scott.
I foresee a few Chris Jones pressures at the very least, if not multiple sacks.
Yeah, that's certainly something to be worried about. And if I'm the Chiefs on the other side, I'm worried about my guy because Mahomes did not finish that game. He is back at practice this week, but obviously sore. And then on top of it, you've got 2 of the top 6 sackers in the league right now. Daniel Hunter rather is number 1, and Will Anderson number 6. Daniel Jones is number 2. He's a half sack behind, and Will Anderson's number 6. But at the end of the day, you've got like 25 sacks between those 2 guys, on top of everything else the Texans do, on top of Lassiter and Stingley playing lockdown defense, on top of the elite safety play that you're getting right now from Bullock. Yeah, man, let's fucking go. Like defense on defense, I'm ready. I think both quarterbacks are probably going to feel it a couple times on a cold day. This game's in Kansas City, correct?
Yeah, and a minor hat tip. I got another hat tip I'm going to give, but a minor hat tip to Christian Harris. Came back, played a hell of a football game for a guy that hasn't played football in 330 days.
Let's hope that Lance McCullers does the same thing. You've often compared them. Let's hope Lance McCullers comes back and does what Christian Harris did on Sunday.
Because, I mean, really, if you look at this Chiefs offense, obviously, what's your answer for Kelsey? And
2-0-2-0 probably.
But, Harris could be a guy that could keep up with him. I mean, obviously, you might also end up putting maybe Bullock on him, but that's going to be a physical mismatch. Kelsey, I think, is going to exploit, I think, our weaknesses on defense up the middle, behind the defensive line. But I don't know, is there a better cornerback tandem in the NFL right now than Lassiter and Stingley?
I don't think so. I mean, they're pretty as close to lockdown as you can get.
I mean, I don't think D-Hop's going to have much of a day. I don't think any of their other, wide receivers, Juju, Smith-Schuster, who's the other guy, Worthy. I don't think any of them are going to have really big days. I think the only guy that really could have a big day is Kelsey.
And his explosiveness has been down this year. The catch numbers are up, but he's not scoring as many touchdowns, right? I think only 2 or 3 touchdowns on the year. A lot of catches, fair amount of first downs, but he's just not burning you the way that he used to.
Yeah. And so I think I feel like our defense has shown improvement even over last year defending the run. And so I don't feel like the Chiefs are going to run on us. So it's going to be a question of, do you have an answer for Kelsey?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Scott. Let's take a quick jump over to the hardwood as the Rockets fell just short in the in-season tournament, losing to OKC in the quarterfinals. That game really just was never really that close, Scott. Kind of felt like the Rockets just couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat. A lot of good open looks, just couldn't really make anything. Does it give you pause, playing against a top team like OKC to lose the way they did? Or, it was one game, you were cold, the playoffs would have a 7-game series. What are your thoughts right now?
Didn't we beat OKC earlier in the year?
I don't believe so.
We beat somebody that was good earlier in the year. I can't remember who it was, but I think we know where the Rockets are. The Rockets are not in that upper 4 or 5 teams in the NBA. They're not going to be as good as OKC. They're not going to be as good as Boston. They're not going to be good as probably even Cleveland. The Knicks, I don't know. The Knicks seem to be up and down. I think the Knicks have more firepower, but it's hard to say. We're in that next tier of teams, and so we're right now sitting the 3rd seed in the West. I'd be very surprised if we end up in the 3rd seed. I think that we probably have the look of maybe a 5th or 6th seed, which if we get through the season and avoid
the play-in,
that would be pretty awesome, I think. And from that point, if you're a 6 playing a 3, you're not expected to win. And so I think this is kind of a transitional year where we're gonna learn a lot of things about who's going to be a part of this rotation long term and who isn't. Like, for instance, coming into the season, we thought Cam Whitmore was going to be a key part of this rotation. Obviously, he's not even there. So, we're gonna see, who's gonna be a part of this thing long term and who's not.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what part of the process is, right? When you bring in this much young talent, you've got to just let them play and let it kind of shake itself out, right? Philly missed on a lot of picks, so their process was a little bit longer, but for the most part, it looks like Stone has done a pretty good job. The guys that are coming in, Amen Thompson, for example, I was not high on him coming into last year's season after the draft. Like, I kind of felt like the best 2 or 3 picks, the best 2 or 3 players were a step or 2 above everybody else. And then it was like, this is what's left. Where now Amen's, looking like maybe the 2nd or 3rd best player of that draft after Wembanyama.
Yeah, I think, and you got to focus. And I say the same thing in just about every sport. You focus on what a guy is able to do and you maximize that. We can look at Amen and say, like, damn it, he can't shoot. Well, yeah, you're right. He does struggle to shoot, but what can he do? He could defend about as good as any wing player in the NBA. And he's great in transition. Nice slasher, good passer. Those are all good things that you can use on a basketball team.
Absolutely. And you know what? The shooting is getting better, right? He's near 40% from the corner from three. So, hey, we can design an offense that allows this guy to flourish, right? If you get the right pieces in place and you've got a guy who can live in the paint, we've talked about it before. You just get the right shooters around him. You get the right pick and roll player with him in Sengun. This is a team that the sky's the limit if Amen Thompson is that guy.
Yeah.
All right, Scott, it's time to give away some awards this week. It is the horse's ass of the week. I know you're excited for this one.
Oh yeah. I don't know if excited is the right word, but I toyed. I have the two people that I have in mind, and I was going back and forth as to who I was going to go with, and I'm going to go with Jeff Bagwell for one reason. There's one reason he's not a scumbag, and that is because everything that I'm saying is kind of whispers behind the scenes. We were talking the first part of our show, probably if you were to count the minutes, the thing we talked about the longest was Nolan Arenado. There's one reason why this team went after Nolan Arenado, and that is because Jeff Bagwell recommended it. Now, after you're responsible for Jose Abreu and for Rafael Montero, um, you have to sit there and wonder, at what point are you going to sit there and take a back seat? And that's my problem is that I think what we really need to be looking at with this team is we really need to be looking at what does Dana Brown think that we're going to need to be doing. And this is one point I was making earlier that I think, I would predict there's probably a better 50-50 chance that Framber Valdez is not on this baseball team on opening day. And as bad as that's going to make us feel, we have to respect what he is up to and what he knows. And to me, it's this chronic Tim just talking about uh, Tim's kind of fighting life there. I just see you're kind of fighting life there. Uh, but one thing I would say though is that we need it's high time that we respect Dana Brown and we respect his baseball acumen. And I am sick and tired of this back of the baseball card bullshit. Yes, Nolan Arenado, when I do the Hall of Fame index, he is a Hall of Fame third baseman. There's little doubt in my mind he's a Hall of Fame third baseman because of what he did in his first 12 years in the league, not what he's going to do for the next 3 or 4 years. And I think it's high time that Jeff Bagwell read the room and say, like, you know what? I fucked up Jose Abreu. Yeah, sure. You and I both thought it was a good idea. But see, that's why we don't get to whisper in Jim Crane's ear because we thought it was a good idea. It's time for Jeff Bagwell to have the stones and have the self-awareness in the room, kind of like that lottery woman I was talking about. Hey, maybe I'm not the go-to guy on this kind of thing.
No, I couldn't agree more, right? Like, there's many times where in these executive positions, you don't want the former star, to be the one making those decisions, right? Because they just don't look at the game the same way as the guy who had to grind his ass off, who fought to stay on a roster, all those other things, right? Because they look at the game differently. There's a reason Michael Jordan has never really been a good NBA executive, right? Because not everybody is Michael Jordan. So when you assess talent, you're doing it from a different way than the rest of us, right? If you're a Billy Bean, for example, a guy who just never really made it, it never really panned out, you look at talent a hell of a lot differently than Jeff Bagwell, right? And so I think it's very rare that the former Hall of Fame or the former Hall of Famer, the former All Star does a great job at being an executive because I don't think the talent evaluation is done at the same process or the same level than the rest of us. So I think you're absolutely right there, Scott, and I think it's a fair call out because the idea of bringing in an aging veteran at this point and paying that level of money for it isn't something that like a good GM would ever do, and it doesn't make sense to me. So that's a good one. I'm gonna call out the NBA commissioner this week, Scott. We've been pretty hard on Rob Manfred, and rightfully so. He's a piece of garbage. But Adam Silver, I don't understand the need for a special court that gives me a fucking migraine. I don't understand the need for a November, December in-season tournament to get more people to watch early season games. Like, I don't know with Silver if it's like with Rob Manfred, like I can tell you don't like you don't like baseball, right? Like you're in it for the money. Like I think almost like Adam Silver likes basketball too much, maybe. Like I don't know what it is, Scott. Like if he's like everybody should be watching this. Why are you not watching? Let's give him more reasons to watch. But like at the end of the day, you've diluted the product, right? Like there's just too much 3-point shooting. There's no physicality in the game. It's just a high scoring, basically NBA All-Star game at this point every single night. And the ratings are way down. And instead of like doing things to try and get back to like what basketball was that made it great, you gave me fucking weird courts and a random November, December tournament worth $1 million.
Well, and so a couple of points of interest here. Let's see, a Hero Go trivia question. Who won the NBA Cup this year?
I think the Bucks ended up winning it.
Are the Bucks going to be a team that's going to make noise in May and June?
Maybe. They got it. Like they're the East is weak.
Who won last year?
The Lakers. They did nothing.
They did nothing. So that kind of tells you number one. Number two, what I would say is that and they supposedly are going to change the NBA All-Star Game format again. We need to accept a couple of things. Load management, I think, is here to stay. I think it's here to stay probably across the board. I think it's here to stay because we realize that we're paying these athletes a shit ton of money, and we're paying them a shit ton of money over a bunch of years. And I would kind of like to see them get at least close to playing out the contract. And so that means that if a guy needs to play 75 games instead of 82 games, that's kind of what that means. And I think Adam Silver's trying to find creative ways to get around that. Well, there's only one way to get around that, Adam, and that is there's got to be fewer games. If you had a 64 game schedule.
Do you remember? I can't remember what the year was, but they had the strike and they came back late.
I think 99, 2000, I want to say.
No, it was probably 2010, 2011, 2012, somewhere in there.
They had a 50-game schedule.
It was like 50 or 55, right? But it was like there was a game every other night, and it was awesome, right? Like it was like baseball season where like you could watch your team every other night or back to back or whatever. There was a lot of basketball on, and like the season starts too soon, right? Like now we start early to mid October. We're like, I loved as like a high schooler, like Halloween basketball started. Like I remember that distinctly, handing out candy, watching the Rockets, Yao and T-Mac starting the year off, high expectations before anybody gets hurt. But now it's like October 14th, October 15th, and then it runs so long.
They did that because they have 82 games. And they
noticed. Well, I like when they're backed up like that. I want to watch my team 2 nights in a row. I looked up on ESPN last night. I'm like, when the fuck do the Rockets play again? Like, we haven't played since we lost the semifinal tournament game. The final was last night. There's no NBA basketball tonight. And then there's a full slate again tomorrow. But like the Rockets lost that tournament game on Saturday and then don't play again until Friday. Like that's in the NFL.
But that's my problem is that when you have those back-to-backs, those star players are sitting out one of those.
Exactly, but you gave them 9 days off in the schedule. You shouldn't have a back-to-back.
Well, what I'm saying is that's why they started in mid-October. Is that they are like, well, we have too many back-to-backs. And it's like, just play fewer games.
Or just do every other day. Like That's what worked after the strike. They played every other day. It was like, hey, we played this day, we travel. We play this day, we travel. We play this day, we travel. And it was like awesome because every other day there was a Rockets game to watch versus I'm waiting 6 days in between games. Like that's outrageous. This isn't the NFL, right? Like there's got to be a fucking cadence to the NBA schedule, and there isn't. You get 4 days off in a row, then you play one game, then you get a day off, then you play back to back. And it's like like you could have just spaced every other day and been fine. And instead you do this weird convoluted shit where you gave them 3 random days off in a row, played a game, took another day off, then played it back to back. Like,
or they would do weird. They would do weird shits like, okay, we're going to Miami. Now we're going to Seattle.
Like, exactly. I don't know, man. But like I love basketball, right? Like I'm an NBA fan. Like I watch less random NBA basketball now than I ever have, but like I watch more Rockets basketball now than I have in the last 4 or 5 years too. So it kind of evens out. But I still watch a fair amount of just, hey, there's an NBA game on, I'll put it on. And just the more that you tinker, every sport's getting it. Football, basketball, baseball, they all getting tinkered. But the more that you tinker, it's just getting ridiculous. Like I appreciate, at least for the most part, basketball, the fundamental aspect of the game hasn't been tinkered with. Like, do we shoot more threes? Yes, but that's more of like a strategy aspect. That's not coming in and saying we can have a golden batter rule and you can,
strategic. Right.
Yeah, not like stopping a, hey, ref, I'm allowed to bring my 3-point shooter in at any time during a possession. You just have to let him walk in and let the other guy walk out, hockey sub style. Like, no, we're not doing that. And I do appreciate that. But like the other shit that they do on the peripheral, the adding a tournament, the scheduling, the court shit. Do you remember a few years ago the short sleeve jerseys that they felt we needed to have? Because even though we wore tank tops essentially for the existence of the league, now we need a different jersey type. Like all this other extra shit is just a distraction. You've got quite possibly the best collection of young talent that's ever played in the NBA. You've got the prime of LeBron's career. I mean, the twilight of LeBron's career, the twilight of Steph Curry. You've got Giannis, nearing the end of his career. You've got a lot going on in this league, and instead we're coloring the court and doing an in-season tournament. Like it's just, it's not good. It's not good, Scott.
All right,
Scott. Let's tip a cap. Let's tip a fucking cap, my friend.
We might do this. I don't know if we might share this one or I don't know what the deal is going to be, but Derek Stingley, you get a hat tip. That was the best football game I've seen a corner play, particularly that last interception where he just flat out took it from Tyreek Hill. And that was basically, and I'm going to get to this here in a minute, that was Derek Stingley almost by himself saying, I'm going to win this football game for you. Because the offense sure as hell wasn't going to do it. So this was him 2 out of the last 3 possessions saying, guys, get on my back. And the big thing that I want to highlight is, and I don't know if you're one of those people, because I don't know if we debated this on the show, but were you a Stingley guy or a Sauce guy on draft night?
I don't think either. Right. I think I was fine with, at that point, whatever. We had so many holes. I don't know. Maybe more so I was a Sauce guy at the end of last season, right? Where it's just like, oh, damn, did we? Or maybe it was 2 years ago after year one, right? Where it was like, damn, this guy had a great year and our guy got hurt the whole time. But I don't know, man. Like I didn't have the trust in Caserio yet at that point.
I think the switch, it was about mid-year last year where Stingley just turned on a switch because he had 5 picks last year. And I want to say they were all in the second half of the season. And he's got 5 picks so far this year. Kalen Bullock's got 5 picks as well. Last year's got 3. This team is turning teams over at a stupid pace. An absolutely stupid pace. But, this is a guy that he shut down CeeDee Lamb. He shut down Tyreek Hill. Last year, he shut down Amari Cooper in the playoffs. This guy is the shutdown guy. And I don't think I'm trying to remember if did Jefferson go off on us? Or
I didn't get to watch that game. I was traveling that day. I don't remember.
I don't think Jefferson. I think Sam Darnold had a good day. I don't think Jefferson had a big day. This is a guy that's going on the other team's best wide receiver every time out, and he's usually winning. And so you got to give him his due. I think he's the best corner in football right now. And when you have a shutdown corner, that opens up so many things for your defense.
I'm going to give a hat tip to a guy in a similar vein who we haven't recognized yet, maybe at least with a hat tip. I want to give 2 hat tips, Scott. I'm going to give a dual hat tip this week. The first one is going to go to Bullock, right? Like, this guy is playing for a rookie out of his mind. Unbelievable football, great instincts for the ball, has unbelievable catch radius or ability to go play center field. Nearly returned one for a touchdown this week. Was a 4th round pick, an absolute gem. Tip my cap to the play of that young man right there. And another guy I want to tip my cap to. We've talked about this defense time and time and time again. And every time that we do, we talk about D'Amico Ryans. And yes, D'Amico is obviously involved in this defense, but not once do we ever tip the cap to Matt Burke, the actual defensive coordinator on this football team, Scott. Like, obviously he works hand in hand with D'Amico, but at the end of the day, this guy's a big part of what they do too. So I'm going to tip the cap to Matt Burke and to Bullock on defense for the Houston Texans this week.
Could you imagine if Bullock had Stingley's hands? Because he dropped an interception in that game, and I think he's dropped at least like 2 others.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a rookie safety with 8 picks?
Yeah, this secondary is scary. Now imagine you draft another safety next year too, right? What if you use your 1st round pick on a really good, strong safety that replaces Ward in the future, right? And then you've got Lassiter, Stingley, Bullock, potential new safety, and Petrie, right? Like, oh, fuck, good luck. Good luck with that.
I would like, and obviously I wouldn't want this in the 1st or 2nd round, but I would like a depth corner. Because we've had some games where if you're without, I think Lassiter's missed 2 or 3 games.
Yeah.
And the guy that they put over there is usually shit. So, a depth corner would be nice. Maybe that's in free agency, who knows. But it obviously wouldn't be a starting quality corner because I think those 2 guys have that locked down.
Maybe a good slot guy, a really good slot corner too would be a nice addition. But yeah, you've got room to work with simply because of how good this secondary is. And again, how good Matt Burke has done of putting these guys in positions to succeed. I understand a lot of it's D'Amico, but at the end of the day, this guy's the defensive coordinator of one of the best defenses I've ever seen and the best defense in franchise history.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Scott. Somebody has wronged us. Someone has said something stupid. Someone has done something. And it's time that they be recognized as scumbags of the week. What do you have for us this week, Scott?
So I have a ritual, Tim. Every Sunday, and this is something that we do as a family. We like to roll in cash. And that kind of got started whenever I think we charged takeout on a Chinese restaurant, and all of a sudden our credit card was used at a gas station because I think they copied the number down. So we started doing the whole thing that if we're going to do takeout, if we're going to do something like that, we're going to do cash. So every Sunday afternoon, usually after the Texans game, I go out and I get some cash. So I turn it on 610, and I'm listening to the post-game show. And I listened to Andre Ware say these words. It was the most complete win that the Texans had in a while. All 3 phases played really well. I don't know did you watch the game or did you watch it on Red Zone?
Fucking Red Zone, man. Again, Fuck Jerry Jones. That's all I got to say about that. We'll get to that.
So, Andre Ware, you're my scumbag because you can be a homer. Absolutely. This team won the big game. They're AFC South champs. Smith, you're AFC South champs, Smith. AFC South champs.
Doesn't matter, Scott. AFC South champions.
So, you know what you do, Andre? You do what Tim and I are doing in this show. We are absolutely pumping the defense as hard as we possibly can because you cannot look at me in a straight face and tell me that was a good offensive effort. They gained less than 200 yards. What is this, 1924? Are we running the single wing? Are we running like a veer or a wishbone? What the fuck are we talking about here?
No. They gained 208 total yards. Let's be fair.
But,
Well, I guess that doesn't include sack yardage. That's
no, you gotta count those.
Yeah.
It was 4 sacks. So I would just as soon as my analyst be honest with me.
I mean, to call a day where your quarterback goes 18 of 26 for 131 and 2 touchdowns, your starting running back gets 12 carries for 23 yards, averaging less than 2 yards a carry, and your number one wide receiver has 4 catches for 17 yards, 2 of which were touchdowns. A complete offense, like a complete game, is fucking asinine. As you said, I get you're a homer. I get it. And you could say the defense played great and the offense did just enough today to get it done, right? We did just enough. We didn't turn the ball over. We played a clean game on offense. That's something you could have got away with. And it sucks, man, because I love Andre Ware, Cougar, Heisman Trophy winner. I think he's as a color guy on the radio, he does a fantastic job. I think that aspect of him is great. But yeah, man, could you imagine like what they said to each other in commercial break after he says that? Like Vandermeer's like, "Are you fucking kidding me, man?"
Well, it almost reminded me of Spencer Tillman. Who was the offensive coordinator under Culley? It was the holdover from Bill O'Brien.
Tim Kelly.
Yeah, and he's like, Tim Kelly is a top 5 play caller in this league. That's what Spencer Tillman said. And I'm like, what league are we talking about? Are we talking about the NFL teams in Texas? Yeah, he's a top 5 play caller in that. Are we going to include like college teams in Texas?
I bet there's some high school coaches who call some creative shit up that's better than Tim Kelly.
I mean, is that what he's the top 5, play caller in the greater Kirby, Houston area? Is that what we're going with? I mean,
I don't know. Where's Yates?
Yeah,
Where's Yates High School? They might be in trouble there.
When he said that, he was saying that on the air. I remember it was Landry Locker who was during his show and him and John's show, and you could even hear Landry Locker going like, "What the fuck are you talking about, dude?" And this is where I got with Andre Ware. It's like, so here are their second half drives, Tim. We have a 9-play touchdown drive, which more than half the yardage was on a fake punt. We had 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. We had another 9-play drive where we had to punt, where in the fourth quarter, we had 3 drives where we could have salted the game. Couldn't do it on any of those 3 drives, Tim. That's why, Derek Stingley had to do what he did. And on each of 2 of the 3 third downs, the offensive line's breaking down and Stroud's getting sacked. And you're going to call that a complete offensive effort?
The most complete offensive effort he'd seen in a while.
Yeah, well, they did have a bye week. So, I guess a while is 2 weeks.
I guess that's fair. But yeah, I love hyperbole as much as the next guy, right? But yeah, that's fucking ridiculous. All right, Scott. I am going to. I don't know who to say the scumbag is, but it's going to be whoever decides the TV coverage. That's my person. I'm going to share for you the coverage map last week in the NFL. The Texans played the Miami Dolphins, and they decided that the Dallas market, again, almost all of Texas, as you can see here, gets that Houston-Miami game. What the fuck do we get? In Dallas, Texas, Kansas City, fucking Cleveland. Explain that fucking shit to me, please. Please, at a time where a Texas team is playing, I get Kansas City and fucking Cleveland? Are you kidding me? I mean, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, what the fuck are we doing here with these NFL coverage maps? I don't know if it's Jerry Jones saying no one else can, the Texans can't be on. Or I don't know what it is, but the Cowboys still play in Houston, right? Like, just because the Texans are on TV doesn't mean the Cowboys won't be. But up here, if the Cowboys are on, Texans will not be on. And it's fucking bullshit.
Well, yeah, and usually they block out when the Texans are actually playing. The other station, I don't think, has a game. But yeah, if the Cowboys aren't playing, there should be no reason why the Texans are not playing in Dallas.
Couldn't agree more. But I'm gonna leave it at that, Scott. That one just drives me crazy. The coverage map bullshit really, really pisses me off. So whoever's in charge of that, you're my scumbag of the week. But that's going to do it for us here this week. We appreciate everybody who joined us and made us a part of your week. And we look forward to seeing everybody back here next week on Born on the Bayou Sports. We'll see you all next time.